Hello and welcome to the CER podcast, Unpacking Europe. This is Zselyke Csaky, a senior research fellow at the CER. I am your host today, and we are covering Hungary's landslide election outcome. I am joined by Zsuzsanna Szelényi, a founding director of the CEO Democracy Institute's Leadership Academy, and even more importantly for today's discussion, a founding member of Fidesz, previously a former MP in the Hungarian Parliament, one of the most clear-eyed analysts of Hungary and its democratic processes. So, Zsuzsa, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So I guess my first question is, did you expect to see this result? Did you expect the opposition to sweep away 16 years of Fidesz rule and deliver Orbán such a blow?
I think I started to believe that this was possible something like 3-4 weeks ago. Up until then, I really was not sure. Despite the fact that TISA party, the opposition party, was leading the polls with 10%, robust 10% for over a year. But because of the Hungarian electoral system and the captured state rigged the democratic chances of any opposition so severely over the last several years that we could not be sure whether, despite of popularity of an opposition party, can manage.
Right. And so we are talking on Monday, the day after the election. Where do we stand now, and what can we expect in the next few weeks in Hungary? What are the biggest challenges that Magyar faces?
So first of all, the result is really outstanding. Even for those who could imagine TISA victory, this level of landslide is really a surprise to every analyst. Though we could imagine that if someone, because the Hungarian electoral system is very difficult to beat Fidesz in local districts, but if someone can manage this, then this system benefits the winner at the end of the game. So if someone starts to win systematically the local district, it can win big. And this is what we saw actually. The TISA party received 45% of popular votes, and TISA received 54% of the popular votes, and Fidesz got 38. So actually the difference is not so spectacular, but Fidesz made earlier years, until they were the winners, the winning compensation so huge that now it actually profited TISA party. So this really large majority, constitutional majority in the upcoming government or parliament, that's really the surprise of yesterday. Now, it doesn't mean that there is an easy situation in Hungary, because of the Hungarian state is still so much captured by Fidesz party that it can still create a lot of difficulties even to convene a new parliament. So first of all, we do have the result, but these are not the final results yet. Some votes from abroad will be counted only 18th of April. Then the president should announce who is the winner and request the winner, hopefully Péter Magyar, to form a government. And then a parliament should be formed within 30 days. So in these 30 days, Fidesz will be still in power. Viktor Orbán is a caretaker prime minister, and we cannot expect Viktor Orbán to silently move away. And he even announced in his speech, when he accepted the outcome of the election yesterday, he concluded that he will fight on. So we can expect a lot of complications, even in last minute, from Fidesz party. So this is the one thing which we have to prepare for the upcoming weeks. Now, I'm sure that TISA party leadership is pretty aware of that. So there's already a public pressure or political pressure from Péter Magyar from his first speeches to ask people who keep high positions in the Hungarian state and can make complications for the forming of the new government to resign. And we already know some of them that they are not going to resign. So we can already see in the very first day some kind of conflict generation attitude from those who are still in position, for example, the head of the media authority and some other institutions. So we cannot not necessarily expect that they will just resign very quickly, which would require serious institutional change, which TISA would be able to manage only after the new parliament is set and some part of the constitutions are changed. So I think that obviously Magyar would like to avoid to change the constitution right at the beginning of his leadership, because that would be too similar to how Fidesz made it. And Magyar should hopefully also want to show a different kind of constitutionalization, but he might be forced to do something in the first day of his leadership. So I think this is one bigger complications he might see in the future. What we can see right away, and I think at the very moment he's keeping a long press conference, there will be very quick changes in international relations. And I think this is something also very important for Hungary's neighbors, allies. What I can read out from his words so far, he mentioned already in his speech last night, the election night, that his first visits will go to Warsaw, Vienna, and Brussels. Now, I think it's symbolic. People might remember that Orban, like 16 years ago, mentioned that the reference point of Hungary would be changed from Washington, Berlin, and Brussels to Berlin, Istanbul, and Moscow. This was a kind of opening item of Orban's Eastern opening politics. Very symbolically, he redesigned where are the focal points of Hungarian foreign policy. Now, I think now that Magyar mentioned these three cities, it demonstrates that he is pulling backwards to Europe. I find it very important that he mentioned Warsaw first. Also, he mentioned that he wants to reconstruct the collaboration with the Visegrad countries, so Hungary's neighboring countries. I think it's relevant also for other neighbors, because he understands the symbolism behind this. And also, I think he takes it seriously. I mean, Hungary can be stronger if it's a part of a small alliance, and that's a kind of natural alliance for us. I think we too spoke about that years ago, that this is important, and I think that that's something very positive. Also, Vienna is Austria is our neighboring country on the west of Hungary, and Brussels is not even a question how important it is. Brussels was the main conflict setting space for Viktor Orban in several years, and it's pretty obvious that there is a need for a quick reset between the Hungarian government and not just the European Union, but basically all our European allies. And I think that we can expect from him soon.
So before coming back to foreign policy a bit more, let me just go back to the rule of law and let me do a double click on that. Because we know that Magyar has essentially all the tools to rebuild democracy in Hungary. Do you trust him to rebuild democracy as he promised?
I don't know whether this is a trust question. First of all, he will have to do serious reset also in terms of rule of law issues, because one of his major promise to his voters was that he will bring back the money from Brussels, the fundings which the EU is withdrawing Hungary for years are all related with corruption cases and rule of law problems. So without this, he will not be able to get the money back. So there is a kind of essential need for that. Also because of his voters are typically from cities, more higher educated middle class people who chanted yesterday evening, Europe, Europe, Europe. So actually what Europe means for Hungarians today is much more than just the money. I think it was also in the last several months, not originally, but in the later times, somehow Magyar put the East-West relationship and where Hungary's part in Europe, in the world, is where we see ourselves between East and West. It was very obvious that we are a part of the West, which also means rule of law and democracy. And I think he will have to do this also to serve his voting base. So even if any political party which have constitutional majority on its own is actually dangerous in terms of democracy question, because there's such a temptation to abuse this big power. We can think that Magyar will not do this, But obviously, it means that watchdog organizations and all kind of other partners who are safeguarding the redemocratization of Hungary should be aware and look for and even help the government, because this is going to be a huge problem, because actually no one before us did this, not at least not in Europe. So there is no any other country since the Second World War which had to make such a dramatic redemocratization process in an environment when there was a counterforce. That's the big difference between today and 35 years ago. The big Eastern European transition to the West happened with the full collaboration of the post-communist parties, if they were still existing, the big support of society, there was openness from the West. Today, there's a very different international environment in this regard. There is a global illiberal, anti-liberal movement. Fidesz party was very efficient to build up this global network. So it exists, and Magyar's government and Hungary will have to face this challenge.
Indeed, I agree with you that Hungary and its democratic recovery will, in some sense, be unique in this way, because there are some similarities with Poland, but in Poland's case, most of the problems were constrained or are still constrained to the judiciary, whereas in Hungary it was a much wider issue. Just on foreign policy, so you mentioned the priorities and some of the issues, but in which areas do you expect Magyar to be constrained going forward? For example, in the relationship with Russia, will his choices be constrained?
Well, obviously, this is the most sensitive area of the new Hungarian foreign policy, Russia, and related to this, Ukraine. And first of all, I believe that the new government will have to see where we are. So in previous years, under Orban's government, there were a lot of informal deals made with various partners, specifically with Russia. So I think we don't exactly even know what the status quo. The new government will have to negotiate with Russia, because we do have still a lot of energy resources and other type of business or other type of relationship with Russia. But the new government will not necessarily have the personal element. So that can be also a reset with Russia. We already have a comment from the Russian government, which is demonstrated in openness to collaborate or negotiate with the Hungarian government, also from the United States. So I think it's these governments, these big powers are pretty reasonable, I suppose, with their behavior when a new government is elected or set. Definitely very sensitive, because of there were too much informality, and we don't know, and this government cannot know everything at the very moment. And the Ukraine relationship is closely related to that. We have quite a lot of proof from the last couple of weeks how intensively the Hungarian government served openly or less openly Russian interest. It's a huge issue to deal with. And also something which may not be so obvious for foreign listeners is that in the last 1 year, Péter Magyar and the TISA party was closely linked to a conspiracy theory by which Ukraine was built up by Fidesz propaganda as major enemy of Hungary, reminding Hungarians that EU membership of Ukraine would pull a lot of money out of this pocket, and Ukraine would pull us into war, and Hungarians would die there. So it was a very dramatic conspiracy theory directly linked to TISA. And we also know from various polls that many Hungarians, especially in Fidesz circles and among Fidesz voters, but maybe more than that, are very skeptic and worried about the Hungary's relationship, because conspiracy theories are very efficient to build up fear and or for fear mongering. So I think Magyar also have to look after the Hungarian aspect of this. But what I expect is that they will need some time to start talks. I expect this government for some reasonable discussion with the Ukrainian government on this relationship. Also kind of significant reset. Anita Orban, who will most probably be the foreign affairs minister in the future TISA government, she is a trusted person, I believe, in this relationship. She is also an energy expert, so she would probably understand more about these relationships after a while. I don't expect some very dramatic change in one day to another. So I think this is where European partners also probably will have to be a bit more patient.
And indeed, that is my last question, is that what would be your advice to Brussels? What should the EU focus on going forward, and how should it approach Magyar?
I think there's a lot of lesson learned from the Polish example regarding the budget and feeding a new government without reforms necessarily. I think they will do this, so there is not such an evident trust from one day to another from Brussels. We Hungarians lost a lot of trust, and this need to be rebuilt. I think Brussels should probably provide a little time and be reasonable and realistic. Also consider the fact that that Fidesz does have this strong holdover. So despite the big victory, TISA party, a TISA government will have to go against the wind for a while, for sure, and just be supportive, I would say, in a way that many of the challenges the new Hungarian government will have to say is new to anyone. We will have to experiment how to come out of illiberalism. We are one day after the elections, and in my circles, this is actually the big thing to reset our mind, how to build in a more liberal, free Hungary. We also need a lot of adaptation process. The Hungarian society does need an adaptation process, and I think we need a solidarity and support, and also kind of watching eyes on how this help can happen and provided, because what happens now in Hungary in the next years will be decisive also in many other European countries.
Thank you. I think that's a perfect way to end our discussion. So thank you so much, Zsuzsa, for coming on the show today. And I would like to thank our listeners for tuning in as well. If you haven't done so, please subscribe, follow us on social, send us feedback, and rate the podcast so that it can reach more people. So thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Zselyke. Bye-bye.